Alright, so this is the internal breakdown and review of this gun, the King Arms M4. Basically, when you're taking your upper receiver off, sorry I couldn't get this on video, but taking your upper receiver off, when your wire gets to the delta ring, your lower receiver should be about this far back. When it's that far back, just pull down, and you won't hurt the wire or anything, but just pull down gently, and it will come apart. Then you can take your gearbox and lower receiver, you can disassemble it as normal. Except for the bolt catch, there's just a pin you push out, pulls out. It's really simple. You know, take the mag out, the pins, and then the gearbox will come out. You might have to mess with your tappet plate a little bit to get the gearbox out. And there we go. Like I said, be real careful with this. You don't want to hurt any of the parts on the gearbox. Once you have the gearbox out, you can set the lower receiver aside. And then here's the gearbox. 7mm bushings. All red reinforced plastic furniture. When I open this up, you'll see what I'm talking about. You can turn it to its side like this, where you can see the Allen keys. Take this quick. Got all these are Allen heads, not screw heads, so you're going to want to have an Allen set to take these out, and then just take them out in any order. Take them out in any order. Get my Allen key. Just make sure you don't lose any, because then that's going to lose structural integrity on the gearbox. Most of the screws are the same. The bottom ones are flat. The ones on the top are, you know, rounded over, so you can, you know, memorize which ones go where. I like to start from the front of the gearbox too, just because the spring guide is in the back. So then you don't have all that pressure on the back while you're still working at the front. Also, make sure when you're doing this that your bushings are still there. Because if you lose a bushing, they could come apart into two pieces. You can put them back together, but just make sure you don't lose your bushings. It's just going to be another bad day. Also, make sure when you're doing this, the wires, since it is a front wired gun and there's no quick disconnect things, make sure your gearbox is not laying on those wires, and if they are, just make sure they're not pinching them in any way, because you don't want to ruin the wires. A few screws left, and then we'll be done. Like I said, it will take some time to remove all these screws. Whoops. Alright, so when you're coming up to the last screw, the first time you take this apart, you might not have to worry about it, but if you've taken it apart already, just make sure you hold down the gearbox shell just in case the spring guide decides to come loose on you. Take all your screws and just set them aside to a place. You're not going to lose them. You got your gearbox. Right there, you got all the screws out. What I like to do is start from the front and just try to pry it open slightly from the front. Just a little bit, not a lot. Once you get it open just a little bit, start working your way back. And you can just start to open the gearbox. There's two ways you can do this. You can put a screw head in the back of the gearbox to hold the spring guide, but I actually just like to hold onto the piston or the cylinder and the spring guide while I'm taking it apart. It's got to be careful though, because the spring is in there, and if it does spring out, a lot of parts are going to be mixed up, and you know, it might end kind of funky. So you have your upper shell off. See, my tappet plate's a little bit out of line right now, which is not good, so we're going to hurry up and take this out. Alright, there we go. Alright, so let's get a close-up of this gearbox. No, that's not a stock spring. That's the only thing that's not stock, and everything else is stock. You have the air nozzle, the brass tube. As you can see, what I was talking about, the red. You got a red reinforced tappet plate. You got a red, you know, trigger housing. You got these are King Arms steel gears, which are good. When I opened this up, it was it was okay with the grease job. I mean, it was kind of overdone like most guns, but it wasn't, you know, crappy Chinese gear. Oh, my anti-reversal latch came up there. The spring guide has a little shim on it, I guess, so it doesn't prevent binding. Not the best one, and it is plastic, but, you know, I mean, it works. I'm probably gonna put in an old ball bearing spring guide just to give it a little bit better durability. What we're gonna do now is I'll start actually taking the pieces out and showing them to you one at a time. There we go. Take the spring out. The stock spring is a black spring. I think it's like an M115 or an M110. I can't really tell, but it's a lot longer than this one is. This is an M120 by Matrix. Set that aside. Take some pliers. I'm gonna get the tappet plate spring right there. Just lift that off the gearbox. Make sure you're holding onto it too, because you don't want that thing to shoot off and you'll never see it again. When you remove that spring, you can take out the entire upper portion, the piston, the cylinder head, all that stuff. I'll show you this too. This is probably the only disappointment with this gun was the piston, and I'll show that why. The standard piston's all polycarb. It's got a metal tooth in the rear. The first tooth on here is not missing, so the angle of engagement is okay. I'll probably look at that later. So the disappointment is the O-ring on here. It's very loose. It's not tight. And when I show you the cylinder head, when I show you the compression is, you know, not good. But I mean, when you are pushing it in fast, it gets good compression, but when you're just going like this, it's not good. So I mean, in a sense, it has good compression, but I would just recommend buying a new O-ring if you're into taking apart your guns. But yeah, when this thing's moving fast, it does have good compression, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Other than that, you know, it's a polycarb piston head. It's got, you know, ported piston head, polycarb piston, glass metal tooth, standard stuff. Gears are all the same. Steel King Arms. Tappet plates are red reinforced plastic, so that probably won't break on you for a while, if at all. Brass cylinder head, you know. No O-ring in there. It's kind of a disappointment, but I mean, it still gets the job done. You can put an O-ring there if you want. But yeah, other than that, you know, it's reinforced in the front and the back. The grease job wasn't that bad. Maybe just wipe it all off, put some silicone in there, you'll be fine. Only problem I've had with my gun, which is what I'm going to be doing now, is the carbon buildup on the trigger has been, you know, just keeps getting to the damn trigger. Basically what carbon buildup is when you pull it back, it's a delay in trigger response. So you just have to keep that clean, use some silicone grease to prevent that. If you want true prevention of that, a MOSFET would take care of it. But yeah, I've had this gun for 4 months, put a lot, actually 5 months now, put a lot of rounds through, and it's just, everything's stock, everything's still working great. It's just the trigger carbon buildup. That's the only problem with this gun so far. But yeah, you can reassemble this. It's like a version 2 gearbox, 7mm ball bearing, steel gears, polycarb piston, reinforced plastic, red, spring guide if you want to change that. But yeah, there's the gearbox of the King Arms M4.